Carl Lafferty now joining us on the Rafters Music and Food Hotline. Carl, good afternoon. A little after 3 o'clock on Thursday as we're getting this done. You guys have wrapped up fall ball. I'm just curious. Y'all did the Pizza Bowl and the Omaha Challenge in the same week. You're not really interested in getting out there and doing the Omaha Challenge with your kids? You know, really team building, kind of getting out there and going through all that.
Hard pass.
Okay.
Man, your body starts to respond a lot different when you get 40 plus. So, yeah, they look a lot more athletic than I do. So I was good with letting them do it by themselves.
I went out there a few years ago, and in my head, when I showed up at 5 a.m. or whatever it was that morning, I went, okay, this might be fun. And then you saw it just starting and went, no, I'll just report on it today. I'm good. It's going to be
Yeah.
all right. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah.
Have
You
at
might
it.
want to show up for the dodgeball. Outside of that, I don't have any interest in pushing a sled or running through Boone's obstacle course at all.
I talked to you and you were on the stair climber earlier in the week. What are we doing to stay in shape during the pandemic? Because you haven't put on the 15. You've been able to stay pretty close, it looks like.
Yeah, I tell my wife I'm on the don't die plan. It's not necessarily to become peak physical condition, but keep the cholesterol low. Figured I've got three boys that are 7 and twins that are 4, so I got about 14 more years that I got to keep them from taking a shot at the title. So just trying to stay in fighting shape. That's about it.
We talked to you right at the beginning of the pandemic. You were doing a lot of wiffle ball with the kids. Y'all were all home. You were trying not
Right.
to kill one another to make sure they were all still breathing at the end of it. I guess a few months later now, what's the update? How'd you survive with the children?
I was thinking about that the other day. And the pandemic it's been rough for everybody, and there's been a lot of horrible things. But I think back to this, to this summer, and it was neat the time that I did have with my kids. And I look at it, and I look back at it, and you get into this Groundhog's Day, where you get in a routine just like
Mhm.
your routine with work. But I kept like heavy blunt or instruments out of their hands. Nobody had to go to the emergency room. We kept all our teeth. So it was a win. But that was a positive. And my culinary skills got a little brushed up 'cause I was cooking a lot more, which helped me stay in a little bit of shape. But yeah, man, it's been really challenging. Especially with your family. You see it with your
Mhm.
kids, as we talked about. But everybody has survived. Was extremely happy that 7U baseball got cranked up this summer
Yeah.
and got kids out of the house. So now that we've got back into school, there's a little bit more of a routine. It's been a little more normal.
What'd you cook? What was the big things you were able to whip up that maybe you couldn't have done beforehand?
Uh, Man, I'm pretty good with steaks. I was always an okay steak guy, but I'm good with steaks. I'm good with pork chops. Um,
Like
Green bean,
egg, rectech, cast iron skillet? What are we doing?
just a gas grill.
Okay.
And I'll bake a little bit, not bake like cookies.
So you're not doing like cakes,
Just
pies, and stuff.
Yeah, no, man, I don't have those kind of skills. I'm a meat and veggie guy.
Okay.
LB's keeps me, in with about 8 pounds of meat a week. So I'm feeding those little rascals, those little kids I got. But yeah, I was a really bad cook, and I figured a few things out so at least I can keep myself alive.
Was it weird in a good way? I talked to Five about this when he was on the show a couple weeks ago. Just kind of having the family around the dinner table for the first time. I mean, hell, for you in the spring or the summer and forever. I mean, it had to be kind of a nice weirdness to get everybody sort of around a little bit where you actually know your family.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think for everybody it's a little different, and obviously for Mike, that having all of his kids that are in college at home, certainly a great thing for him. But for me, having that time just to be there, because normally I'm a ghost. Like
Mhm.
summer, I'm not watching my kids play baseball. I'm not there to cook them dinner. I'm not there to do a lot of things, and so that was kind of the weird thing as I look back at it is this year, as 2020 has presented, a lot of struggles to, people far and wide, that I try to always look at the positive things. And those were some of the things I could grab a hold of. I think that, years down the road when I'm sitting in Atlanta at a perfect game tournament and I'm driving through 7 a.m. traffic to get to some random high school, I'll think about that summer that I did have with my kids. And I'll be thankful that I'm on the road recruiting and doing my job, but certainly very grateful for the time I got to spend with them.
Yeah, you just alluded to it. You and I were discussing right before we started the show. They moved this recruiting dead period to April 15th. Where are you guys sort of in your calendar? I mean, I know you just had signing day, but like, I mean, what does this do for spring JUCO pickups like y'all do sometimes, or the next class or whatever? I mean, what's the hindrance in this right now?
Well, that's been a tough thing for me. With younger kids, and it sounds kind of crazy, but you can do enough. I don't want to say video review because we've gotten more to the football side of things where we're doing a lot on video. But guys get out there and play, and there's that top high end percentage of players that are universally identifiable for younger kids and whatnot. So we've been able to stay up. We've got some great commitments. Our 2022 class is outstanding. Picked up some 23s and even a couple 24s that we're really, really excited about. But probably the thing that I sit here today and I've thought about, heck, just moving forward is a lot of times when you're going to look for a junior college player, it's something you want to see with your eyes because it's plug and play. Mm-hmm. Meaning you're going, okay, I'm looking at this kid. How would he be if he was in our uniform right now? Because technically he could be. And you use junior college players a lot of times to fill gaps because of the draft, because of all kinds of different things. And certainly that's always presents itself. Every year we're looking for JUCO guys. And now when you start saying, okay, you can't get out to April 15th, at least that's what we're being told right now. Who knows if it'll be longer. It makes it a little scary because you can edit video. You can do a lot of different things that, make it a little more difficult to get the feel because our game is so mental, meaning the confidence, the way you carry yourself, what you do. And there is a feel to sitting in the ballpark and watching someone with your own eyes and having a sense of, what the environments are like and right at that time and how they're performing versus just watching it on a computer screen. So probably that's the thing that's been that if you said, hey, what's the biggest thing in front of my face that I'm trying to figure out, the JUCO kids or the guys that we would be recruiting, from, the end of the fall into the spring to plug and play for next year.
This sounds like a joke, and I guess in some ways it is, but I'm really being serious. I guess you're talking to the most mature kids in that class, but when you're recruiting a 2024 and you're having the phone call with the 2024 kid, I mean, I get that we're all kind of in on the joke and it is what it is. And you are trying to identify and you're trying to lock in because every school is, but there has to be at least a part of you that goes, hey, I'm talking to a 2024 kid.
Yeah. Usually when you realize, hey, I'm talking to a 2024 kid, those aren't the kids that you get the most jacked up about. A lot of times the ones that you're talking to and you're recruiting and you're pulling the trigger on, they seem a lot more mature. But yeah, you just scratch your head. Like I tell kids like, hey man, like I know you don't want to talk to some old dude on the phone, like at night forever, so I want to catch up with you. I want to hear what's going on in your life, but I'm not here to, seem like a vacuum cleaner salesman that's just trying to give you a bid on Ole Miss. But you're right, because it is different. And, sport to sport, I realize recruiting is different. Obviously, baseball is much different than football and than basketball, so on and so forth. But I think we are super unique in the amount of early recruiting that we do.
Is it gotten worse or is it the same? I mean, how is it different than 5-10 years ago?
It's gotten way worse. Okay. And everybody's you're battling because baseball has the unwritten rule of once a kid commits, other schools leave him alone and he stays within that commitment. So everybody wants to get that commitment to get kids off the market, so to speak. Sure. And if you ask me, I think it's going to flip on its head. I think you're going to have more decommitments. I think we're going to move a little bit toward that model of football. But the difficult thing for that to happen, everybody says, hey, that's an obvious thing, like, become more of like football where kids are making their decision their senior year. The tough thing about baseball is we're a partial scholarship sport, and you're talking about percentages, and sometimes a scholarship is like you're bidding on the kid. And then other schools have different different ways to offset costs other than athletics aid. And I'm not trying to go down that crazy road.
You want to do 5 minutes on that today?
Yeah, I got all day. But I don't think that, that makes it, I think, a little slower trend because, you're asking kids, even when we offer them a scholarship, still pay a lot of money to come here and play baseball.
Is it almost kind of like, you and I maybe discussed this before. I don't know if I asked the question the same way. So if I did, pardon me. Is it almost kind of like a nuclear weapon a little bit though? Because if you start recruiting other teams' kids, they're going to start recruiting your kids. So in some ways, it's mutually assured destruction. I mean, is that why it's taken as long as it is to get to that point? Because I know there are some schools that are getting a little closer to the line with it, and there's some stuff behind the scenes that happen. But in my mind, I'm going, hey, like you said, you've only got 3 coaches who can recruit all campus. I mean, it's not like you got a full staff here to protect your own dudes. So you start picking off Florida or Georgia or Vanderbilt's kids. Well, suddenly you're opening the door for everybody to go, hey, well, hell, he's doing it to me. I can do it to him, right?
No question. And I think that's why you have seen it's been so slow to get there. But with increased pressure, and usually, be honest with you, it starts at the top of the food chain, because if you're sitting at the top of the food chain, you don't have as many people you're worried about eating you. You're trying to eat all the people below you.
Yeah.
So it's more of a, I don't want to say an environment, something that becomes more commonplace. And the more it happens, the more you see, because kids are decommitting more and more. And now you're seeing schools decommit kids later and later. So, yeah, I mean, if you said, step back 5 years ago at this exact time, what did the landscape of recruiting look like then, from how early kids were committing to how people recruited maybe behind the scenes? It was way different. It was significantly different. We just keep getting earlier and earlier and speeding up more and more, because we're all trying to grab the next best player. So eventually it'll get to a point where it kind of flips on its head. When will that be? I don't know, but it'll happen.
Hypothetically, how does it sort of happen? You got like the college coach that talks to the summer coach, and he tells the kid, hey, if you do this, then this happens.
Yeah, well, it'll just get commonplace where, okay, you've got one, and in my head, I know there's one particular school out there that will just say, hey, I'm going to recruit play. I don't care. Like, I'm just going to recruit the best players, and if they're committed to you, I don't care. Mm-hmm. And you're going to, when it starts trickling down and more schools do that, and it becomes more and more commonplace, then there'll be a little bit more of a mix-up. I think you'll always have the kids that will commit early that are, hey, Ole Miss is where I want to go. But what happens, and the reason you're seeing more decommitments is, okay, 9th grader, pretty good player. One school offers him and says, hey, we'll offer you a scholarship. And then nobody else is really jumping in, because it's just, he's not a no-brainer, but he's a good player, and everybody's kind of trying to see what happens. Well, the kid all of a sudden starts, he takes the offer that was on the table because he's scared of losing it. Not that he loved that school, but he just, a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush, so to speak. Well, you fast forward a year and a half later, he becomes a really good player. Now he knows he can go wherever he wants to. And he goes, well, man, I made this decision because I felt like I had to, not because I wanted to be there. And so that's where you're seeing more decommitments and kids opening things up and moving forward. So it's so fluid. I mean, I can't begin to speak about football or basketball, but, the baseball recruiting landscape is just extremely fluid.
How long is the phone call with the 2023, 2024 kid when you're just introducing yourself? How long does that last?
10 minutes. Sometimes It depends on if you're really talking. Like my wife tells me, you talk to a brick wall, and
sure.
I can. So there's times that it goes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I mean, it just depends on the kid and how talkative they are and how they carry conversation.
You've got to read it to know when to get off the phone, right? Hey, we're at the attention span. It's over.
Yeah, and I think, what I've learned as a recruiter is, yes, my job is to sell Ole Miss, is to tell them about Ole Miss. But I think you got to be really authentic. It's not like you can be Jordan Belfort and try to get on there and make the sell. So, it's a lot about, especially with kids today, a lot about relationships. Each generation is different, and kids are different, and you've got to learn how to connect and adapt and create that connection with them.
Mike was talking a couple weeks ago about, and maybe what you said, kids are different, generations are different. He was talking about that he didn't want to use the word solve, because he said, I don't think that's right. But he said, I think you have to compliment kids more today than you did 15, 20 years ago. That you have to coach them different. You have to whatever. What have you sort of seen there? I mean, even from Mike, how is he different on the field or every day versus when he coached you?
Oh,
yeah.
That's a great question. I think that's why he's been so successful. I mean, I think people on the outside don't realize that. But he adapts to kids, especially, I think part of it is having teenagers himself, being a college baseball coach. Obviously, he's a voracious reader, but you start to understand kids are different. And the word soft, I don't think is correct. If you said, okay, because I think it's really easy as a 41-year-old guy to sit here and say, oh, yeah, I don't understand why they can't do that. They must be, soft, this, that, and the other. Well, when I played here, like we used to have to get the newspaper the next day to know who won in the SEC. I didn't go over to the grill at 1810 and eat and turn on SEC Now and see myself getting punched out in the ninth inning over and over again. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and not to go on a tangent about social media, but there's just so much exposure. I don't want to say pressure, pressure even, so much that hits their brain that we never had to deal with. I never had to deal with. I mean, you think about I cringe to think, oh my God, what if cell phones had cameras when I was in college? Oh my gosh, it's awful to think about that. So I think that kids are just built different, and I think they do respond to positivity, to reinforcement. I mean, you start to look across the board and you go, okay, anxiety and depression, for teenage and adolescent kids is up over the last 6 or 7 years at an alarming rate. Well, I think that, negativity doesn't help that. And so that's what I think, you see it in the way you communicate things to them. How, not that you're not honest with them, and not that there's not a standard, and not that there's not accountability. There absolutely is. It's the way you deliver that message, and then the positive reinforcement that you give when they do something positive. Where in years past you may have not said much, well, what you're supposed to do. Well, let them know that's a good thing, even if they're supposed to do it. So just think you got to keep adjusting to the times.
So who's a little harder on you? Is what you're saying? Y'all's team?
Yes. That's every guy comes back, man, and just like, hey, Bianco's getting soft. He's getting soft, man. And I just laugh. I think he's just learning how to, connect with kids better.
Even in a local media standpoint, though, I mean, there's people around back 01, 02, 03, but, Carl Lafferty does something stupid one night and gets a DUI. Media's probably not calling Mike 5 times the next morning. I mean, you probably can't skate that through right now. Whereas, there's a time where you or Mike or anybody, I call before a certain time and it's like, oh, hell, what happened last night?
Oh, yeah. You just like, oh, gosh, like that is the worst phone call. Like he's calling at 7 a.m. This can't be good.
Yeah.
And it's the world we live in. Everything is instant. Everything is up to the second. And now, with social media, whether it's right or wrong or true or false, there's stuff coming out just, every time you hit refresh. And so that's the challenge for these kids. That's the challenge coaching them. I think there are a ton of lessons that have always been consistent in our game and in society from the way, parents raise kids 10, 15, 20 years ago that are applicable now. I think the way you communicate it to kids may have to be a little different just to feed it to them and chop it up in ways that they understand it better. And I think that's part of coaching. It's, and the big thing is just connecting with them. Like you've got to be able, that doesn't mean that they love you, but you've got to be able to connect with them. They've got to trust that, one, that you care, and two, that you're being straight with them. Whether they agree with it or not, they know that you are being direct and honest.
Is the SEC network, I know you're not the only conference that does it, but the ability to show every freaking game for the most part, does that help recruiting versus other conferences? Is that a benefit when you got a kid that's down to Ole Miss, TCU, and Stanford or something?
Yeah, well, I think it's just awareness too. And I think it's, you look at, one of the talented freshmen we have here, Jacob Gonzalez. I think one of the reasons that, we get him out of Southern California is because of the awareness of the SEC and who we are. I mean, you think about, years ago, it's really hard for those guys sitting in Glendora, California or Los Angeles to really have an understanding of, hey, what is Ole Miss like? Because it's not like they're just happening by here for the heck of it. So the SEC network has been unbelievable. It is, obviously has grown our brand, not just, Ole Miss, but, the SEC itself. And it helps tremendously when you're talking about pulling kids from, different parts of the country.
Yeah, I think it was Nancy Diamond that said once all the thing happened with Derek and Stanford, basically it was like, hey, go on the internet and suddenly they've got the season, in this, and they can look it up and they can see and experience Ole Miss a little bit. That's different than most places at that point. So
no question.
So you got a little smaller class this year to sign. You're because of the scholarship stuff that you mentioned. You're a little cyclical. I mean, it kind of goes in order of how much money is available. When you're putting together a class that you know is a little smaller, I mean, obviously it's best available and you're putting together whatever. But how is that different versus maybe the year where you know you've got a little more money available?
That it's a great question. It's one that comes up in our office, and I don't know if it's so much designed as it's just feel. And what I mean by feel is, recruiting is something that we talk about every single day. Obviously Mike is involved with it several times during the week, but Clem and I are talking about it. We have, a conversation about next year's. Now, I'm the one that brings it up because I'm the one that's, always thinking about next year's team and the year after and the snowball effect of anything that happens with personnel. But I think you just kind of start to get a feel for what you're doing. And you get to a certain point when you're recruiting further out with younger kids, you're always looking for arms. That's obvious. But you look for certain kind of profiles that fit within our program. And so you'll start out building those pieces, and you'll know when, like, well, no, when I put it on paper, I don't need another corner guy, or I don't need another middle guy, because this is who we're going to have here in this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't know if it's necessarily you go, hey, this class is going to be smaller, so we're not going to recruit X amount of pitchers or X amount of position players. I think you're just always looking at, the next year's class on paper. So there's a trickle down effect as you fill that out and plan it out for next year based on the money that you have available. It's just something it's daily. It's almost like looking at my checking account, like on Regions, to make sure Lauren hasn't deducted a massive amount of money out of it. But I guess that's the best way to explain it. It's not a, hey, this year block kind of deal. It's just a evolving thing.
Do you have kids that y'all pull up because they're too good? I mean, how do you worry about draft? How do you worry about, hey, we can't lose too many numbers? I mean, because frankly, other than the year with Caccini and Hensley and Trahan and those guys, you've been able to bypass that and kind of find that happy medium of really good college guys that aren't automatic pro dudes that you're going to lose.
Well, you get into the scholarship piece of it, and it's something I learned that year. And not crying poor because there's so many good things about Ole Miss, but we only have so many scholarship dollars. And when you get into let's take like a Bobby Wall. People remember Bobby, how great he was, out-of-state pitcher, high-profile guy. Well, if we're going to give that guy a 75% scholarship, we can only give 75% to so many players. So you got to kind of hedge yourself. And if you pay a bunch of high-end guys, they never show up, and then you gave some smaller scholarship to some more projectable guys or developmental guys, well, then you're just raking off the top layer of players. And so you do have to be a little more, I don't want to say particular about it, because you're recruiting these kids at such a young age. Sometimes they just blow up and you don't even know it. But there always are the guys that are, maybe the number one player in the country. The number one player in the country is, I can't tell you the last time he ever showed up at college. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm trying to go get him just to get him. Now, if the number one player in the country was interested in Ole Miss, would I tell him no? Of course not. I would go recruit him. But I'm not going to beat myself down, spin my wheels there and allocate a lot of scholarship dollars to try to get in a fight on that kid and him not get there. So I think there is a happy medium. You kind of have to reverse engineer it. And what I mean is, when I say reverse engineer it, you have to really understand, what does professional baseball value? How do they evaluate a player? Look at him and say, okay, this is how I think he fits in my college baseball program and can be successful. Now, here are the hickeys that might be on him for professional baseball that would allow him to slip down a tick below what we really think his signability would be. And it's not perfect. We're going to lose some guys to the draft because we're going to recruit good players. But I think you go back to answer your question. There are some kids that, when I say won't recruit, I just won't, kill myself to go try to get them based on the likelihood of them showing up.
Well, and you commit them so freaking early that things change too. I mean, you look at it. I mean, a couple of different examples here. I know he's football guy first, but Jerry and Ely 15 years ago probably is a first round pick because of speed and how baseball was just different back then versus the three outcome nature of professional baseball. And then, in the same class, Joe Gray at one point's the number 5 player in the country. He falls a ton, and then you've got like a Gunnar Hoagland that moves up throughout the process. So they're bouncing all over like a dang Plinko board.
No, it is. And when people look at rankings, I always laugh about baseball rankings because baseball, they don't do it like football. I think football is way more publicized. It's easier to measure. And I think basketball as well. Baseball, I mean, these kids change so much in a 2-month period. Like it's unreal. And so like Clem always tells a story about Ryan Rollison, and Clem goes, I thought Rollison sucked. I couldn't believe, like, I just get this job and I'm looking at you and going, we're offering this kid. We were the only offer at the time, and all this, of course, he turned into Ryan Rollison. He turned down a ton of money, turned down $1.5 million out of high school, and got $3 million here after 2 years. And that is what can happen, with recruiting. Well, it can happen with 18 to 22-year-olds, but they're physically changing so much. They're emotionally changing. But I think if you're in it every day, you can get a feel for what's going on, and you try to target what works for you in your program and what you develop. And then within that, guys you think you can actually get to campus, not that easily get to campus, but hey, you may sweat it. They may sign, they may not. But like if you go back and look at it, if you said Hensley, Trahan, and Caccini, like I knew coming into it, like in the fall of their senior year, it's, less than a 20% chance to show up. And I think you try to steer away from that as much as you can. If it happens because a kid blows up, it happens. We had 2 kids sign in the second round a couple of years back, Jennings and Lemons, and they kind of blew up in their senior year. Yeah. And those things just happen.
Cody Reed,
another one.
Yeah. Is it a little show and tell on the first fall for the newcomers? They come in and you hope that they've got that mentality or the aggressiveness, or just the transition that you kind of hope for? I mean, because you're speculating and you're hoping and you're projecting, but you don't necessarily know till they get on the field, do you?
No, and man, it's an old saying. The best thing about freshmen is they become sophomores, because baseball is a mental game, and sometimes guys can't get out of their own way. Like you go back, you look at a Tyler Keenan, and he was obviously very talented. But I think he never got in his way. He walked out and thought, man, I'm one of the best hitters in the Southeastern Conference as a freshman. There's a lot of kids, and it's natural. They go out as a 19-year-old from, some high school, and they're on the SEC stage, and guys are throwing harder, bigger, stronger, and it's more competitive than it's ever been. I think there's a little doubt. There's a little self-doubt. There's a little nervousness that doesn't allow them to perform like they can. And so for some guys, it takes a little longer to, I guess, have their coming out party, or that they become the guys that we always knew they could. But yes, to answer your question, man, when we get them out there, it's like Christmas morning. You're opening your presents and going, which present do I really like? Or which one did grandma send that's just kind of okay?
Well, and they're just freshmen too. So there's like the whole instant gratification of, hey, this guy might need to develop, but chill out. Just give it a second. Yeah. Kids suck in the fall sometimes. It is what it is. I mean,
no question.
To the point of it's changing my coverage, because I'll get all these fall numbers and I'm like, okay, great. I don't know. Like I'm not going to hype up this kid because March gets here and he's not playing. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's the fall.
True. It is. It's the fall. There's, not that it doesn't mean anything. There's certainly a lot of good that comes out of it, but you're exactly right. Guys can have, can really struggle in the fall and be. Look at Alex Presley. Alex Presley was a guy that was going to get redshirted in 2005, and then someone got in trouble, got suspended the first weekend, and hey, we're going to have to give him a couple of bats. He gets like 10 hits. He's a freshman All-American, and you look up, he's a 5th rounder and plays in the big league. So yeah, anything can happen.
Did you get out of the fall what you hoped from pitching standpoint? I mean, you had guys that only threw, starters back in the season only threw 20 innings before it gets shut down. I know Diamond threw a little in the summer, but not really. Did the pause hurt, and if so, to what effect? And were you able to kind of get anything from just an arm strength standpoint, getting some guys stretched out a little bit this fall? What'd that look like?
Yeah, I think we did. There was that struggle with COVID. in the first few weeks on campus, you had a lot of kids. Obviously, we had some positive tests. You had contact tracing. So you had kids in and out. There was a real inconsistency with what was going on. You move after that kind of break we took in the middle, and like the last 4 weeks of the fall, everybody was out there every day. You kind of got to, and it was really consistent. And I think we were good. I think some of the older guys accomplished what they needed to accomplish. Some of the younger guys performed well, or you really started to get an understanding that this is what they are and this is what they need to do over the next 2 months coming back to get ready for, the spring. So I felt good about where we ended up. Like at the end, by the time we got to the pizza bowl, I was like, all right, let's just keep everybody healthy and, move on, because I felt like, okay, we have a much better understanding of ourselves. So some of those guys, you could tell, like guys rolled, some guys really used that break and that time to make a jump. And then some guys were just, and some of it not to a fault of their own, they just were really limited in where they could work out. Did they have a place to throw? Were they in a city that was locked down? They had no summer baseball. So some guys, to get them ramped back up was good, because I think we got them back in shape by the end of the fall, and we can, carry that through to the spring.
What's it been like watching Gur Holston do this and look like his old self? I mean, you talk about a year where he throws one inning, and then even in the spring, it was kind of inconsistent, and the command was kind of all over the place when he was out there. I mean, Mike gave him a compliment a couple of days ago of not just his best, but look, maybe as good as anybody he's seen in the fall over the last 2 weeks or so. And, the velocity is up into the mid-90s at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's as a coach, when you recruit kids, you take the baseball out of it, like separate how good of a baseball player they are, and you go, okay, what kind of kid is this? And that's for me how I connect with them. And I mean, we're human, so like them, meaning, and Greer is an awesome kid, and he has battled through all kind of stuff, and you've seen him go up and down and whatnot. I was so happy for that kid, man, because the last 5 innings, he threw. It was 2 separate outings, 5 innings, no hits. I want to say around 10 punch outs, no hits, no walks, like just dealt 93 to 96 with a good slider. And he looked like a guy, man. So that was exciting, because I guess the biggest thing for me is I've kind of watched him through this journey. And initially when he was battling some stuff, I think he kind of got down. And I guess since last year, he decided, hey, man, I'm just going to work my butt off. I am going to work as hard as I can. And physically, when you look at him, he looks great. And you go, it's not like it just fell out of the sky and fell on his head. Like, he has worked his butt off to get here from the baseball standpoint. And that makes you feel good as a coach and makes you, happy for him. So, and happy for our pitching staff.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. I'm not even going to ask you. You have no idea where he's going to fit or what a role is going to be necessarily, but it's got to be like a dang lottery ticket a little ways. You go, well, all of a sudden you insert him, and that shuffle looks totally different a little bit. No doubt. Especially, you talked about Taylor Broadway made a step forward this fall as well, from velocity, stuff, command. So now hey, we'll throw Greer Holston in there. That makes the back end of that bullpen look a lot different. Yeah, Broadway, it's an interesting case where you end up getting that third-year JUCO kid like that, where you get that extra jump where, because, a lot of times those first-year JUCOs look like freshmen. I mean, that transition's all over the place, and it's hit or miss, but you don't typically get that third year to kind of play around with them a little bit. No, and you're talking about a kid, I think the biggest thing for Taylor is, in junior college, he was a two-way guy, and a legit two-way guy, like play shortstop, play third base, and pitch like as a reliever. And when you look at him and evaluate him, you always knew his upside was on the mound, but he's really learned how to pitch. Now, he was making a move last year, and you could see it coming, but it's really just continued to take off because he did work his butt off over the summer and over the break. And, he's becoming a pitcher, not just a guy with a good arm that throws strikes. Mike went into really a lot of detail on Tuesday about why Diamond, Hoagland, and Nikhazy don't hit, because frankly they better be really, really good to hit to not get an injury or pull a hamstring or something. From that standpoint, what pitchers over the years have bugged y'all the most to get into the lineup and hit? Who's been the biggest pain? I'm trying to think. I mean, Hoagland, Nikhazy, those guys, they're good. I mean, 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 they're good. I mean,
That's a good question.
Because every pitcher hit in high school, they were probably the best player on their team.
Oh,
So everybody feels like they can go out there and hit 520 immediately.
yeah. Like you look back, I remember Chris Ellis used to always ask. I was like, Ellis, man, I watched you strike out in BP at PG National. Like I watched you swing and miss three times at BP. So absolutely not. You'll never get it back. And there were guys like him, like Laxer. And I'm like, we have pitchers BP.
Mm-hmm.
If we sweep,
yeah,
then the pitchers get to take BP, and it's horrible. Like you see some atrocious swings. I mean, just atrocious. But they're strong. They're a little bit athletic. They'll hit a couple home runs, and they'll start talking about how good they are. Like, no, you're not good. But then, of course, you hear, hey, I can hit. I mean, like, no, just be quiet. Go down to the bullpen. You're not going to hit. So, yeah, Chris Ellis is a name that comes to mind first and foremost.
Is it one of these guys, or I mean, how often does somebody at least get close enough to battle that decision where it's, hey, are they good enough? Can they do it? Where we, give them some swings? I mean, because I really don't remember many at all. Maybe since Matt Tracy was the last one that got some cuts.
Well, Doug and Gunner were pretty close. And Diamond, like if you ask me, could those guys hit at the Division I level, like all of Division I? Absolutely, they could.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to look at it and you go, okay, if we ranked our hitters 1 through 15, they may be like the 12th hitter, good enough to maybe get some at bats and get in there. But you go, okay, if I run Nikhazy out on a Tuesday night to get an at bat against Memphis, and he rolls his ankle running to first base, or gets hit on the hand and breaks his pitching hand,
You're a moron. Yeah. No, don't worry. The message boards will be very kind. There will be no negative words said.
Nobody would be angry or upset or.
No one will scream at you going to the bullpen or nothing. It'll be all right.
Oh no, very cordial.
So
that's what you get to. That's where you just get is the juice worth the squeeze. And if you have a kid thinks, okay, he can hit every day in our lineup, then you're going to hit him. You're Stephen Head. Ryan Olenek kind of the reverse side of that, meaning he was a hitter that pitched a little bit. But I think this isn't recruiting jargon or coach speak. I think you got to be very open to it. And the one thing that we try to do, like, you look at Diamond. Diamond had 70-something at bats this fall. He got out there, so he had a couple home runs. You have to make sure that as a coach, you look at it and you give them that opportunity. But then especially as you get to the spring, you just mitigate the risk. You go, okay, I've seen enough to know that based on our other personnel, like I don't know how you would get consistent at bats to go out there. Versus like, no, man, he can hit. We're gonna have to hit him because he's gonna help us win games offensively.
You guys let him run. He was a hell of an athlete. How close was Bobby Wall? Could he hit? Could Wall hit?
No.
Terrible hitter. All right.
Terrible hitter.
Really?
Yes, terrible. I'm trying to think about the better hitting pitchers. Obviously Tracy, he hit here.
Vance Lynn was convinced he could hit. He told me every day.
Oh God, he still tells me to this day.
Yeah, he's mad about it 20 years later, 13 years later.
Yeah, they gave him a bat in AAA that had a hole in the barrel, like that was his hitting award. I think Buckvich was probably the closest. If I go way back in time, there hasn't been any good ones. Like Ryan Rollison acts like he's the worst hitter. He is one of the worst hitting guy. I hope his golf swing's better than like swinging the bat. But yeah, you're right. They all think they can hit. None of them really can. Or we give them a chance to hit.
And that's the funny thing about it. I mean, if Doug doesn't blow up as a freshman and end up on the weekend rotation, maybe he is a hitter, and you're trying to figure out how to fit him in as a two-way guy. A couple of years down the road. I mean, who knows? It just
no question. And I think it just with Doug and Gunner, you look at it and you go, okay, probably the guys that keep them from hitting, to be very honest, are Graham and Leatherwood and LaFleur, where you go, okay, how many kind of physical left-handed bats do you have? Where are they in comparison to them? And how much does that shove them down for the opportunity they get on the field? If it was a year, because you'll remember years back, there's been years that we haven't had a ton of left-handed hitters. Like, then you go, okay, hey, man, we do need someone with some juice from the left side that maybe we could pinch hit or do something with, or get in there against some right-handers just to break it up. there might be a little bit of an opportunity there, but that's just the way it shakes out, and it's different from year to year.
What's the next step for Doug and Gunner each on the mound? What do you want to see this year?
Man, I just want to see them be themselves. They were good this fall. I think Doug's slider's gotten better. Gunner's changeup's gotten better. I feel like Gunner's throwing a tick harder. Really, just to go out there and watch them perform without, just like you said it earlier, when you're a freshman, you're worried about everything else. You're worried about, can I do it? What's this like? There's so many external factors that influence you versus like when they were in high school, they just showed up and, hey, I'm going to go pitch and hit and compete. Well, I think obviously, we're there with those two guys, meaning they're just as comfortable standing out on that mound as they were in their high school mounds. And now just go perform and be your guy, be yourself. I mean, I think they have a chance to, I'm not saying they will, but I think they got a chance to be as good a 1-2 punch as we've ever had, especially at the college level and winning baseball games. So just really want them to go be themselves.
Is Dunhurst as good as y'all's had behind the plate?
Yes. Yeah. I think he's got a chance to be special, man. He can really catch and throw. And the thing about it, when you compare him like to a Cooper Johnson, which is an easy comparison because Cooper was so gifted defensively. Dunhurst, like his bat has a chance to really play. And so you start putting that together, man, you go, ooh, that can be pretty special.
Catch and throw and just defense. How do you? Where is, say, Stuart Turner, Cooper, and Dunhurst? How are we pyramiding them?
You're gonna make me rank my kids?
Yeah.
Which kid do I love the most? That's really hard. Man, that's really hard. Stuart, we didn't have him for as long as we've had the other two, but he was so good, and he had a good offensive year.
You didn't expect that either, right? Like you thought if he hits anything, he's great. Because I remember talking to Basham about it. Because I guess Basham was at Eunice down there at the time, and it was, hey, even if he hits 200, he's damn good behind the plate. It is what it is, and you come out and he's hitting 400 for most of the year, and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah, he's good. An awesome kid. I think, man, Turner could really throw. Yeah. So I don't like anytime you rank this, you're like, how could you put him? Turner was probably, I think, a tick behind Cooper and Dunhurst.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what Cooper and Dunhurst throwing. Man, they're oof, buddy. Turner could really receive, and they're all three different. Cooper throwing is different in the way that when you start talking about throwing to second base, yeah, man, he can throw to second base quickly. But Cooper could back pick you at any time. He was so freaky athletic back there. Dunhurst, he'll throw you out from his knees. He'll throw you out anyway to second base. Dunhurst does a real good job of receiving. Like Nick Fortes and Dunhurst stick out in my mind about how good they are receiving the baseball. And so, damn, I can't rank them. I can't. I'll get murdered.
You're going to throw paper at me on this one, and you can take your current two guys out if you want. You got to build a weekend rotation with all your guys since you've been there. Who's
God.
Who's your three?
Yeah, just three.
Well, I mean, go ahead, but yeah, I want another three.
I'm gonna take my two guys out of it this year. I'll take my two guys out of it this year.
Yeah, take Doug and Gunner out. That's not fair. But you're in the College World Series final, and you get to pick any three dudes from your tenure. Who you got?
Oh, all of them like perfectly healthy. Everything's great.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm gonna roll out Lance Lynn, Drew Pomerantz, and then on Sunday I'm gonna throw Scott Biddle. And I'm winning.
You just picked three dudes that were all on the same team of a 3 seed in a regional, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the amazing thing about it. Amazing thing. God, if they would have had some decent coaches, man. Who's
the hardest to leave out, Bobby? After that, or Rawlson?
Bobby Rawlson, even Myers was pretty good. There's guys all through that.
Because my running bit, I've told you this, and you just shake your head at me, is I think Christian Trent was the most important player in your program.
100%. Yeah, you talk about easily. Ellis and Trent had the best year of a better college year than any of those guys.
Yeah.
it's easy to pick Lance and it's easy to pick Drew. One, because they are so competitive. They are just they're dogs on the mound, and will let you know that. And their stuff's so loud. I mean, you're talking about guys that have made millions of dollars in the big leagues. It's obvious. But Biddle, like if you go back to it was 2009, what he was doing on Sunday, like whenever he went out there, I mean, he was the magic man. Like he was an invisible, like nobody could hit him. Like you couldn't hit him. Now, obviously, you know, he had some injuries and, you know, the year before he's in the bullpen and things like that. But yeah, man, if he's healthy, with Scott Biddle, like that's pretty good weekend rotation.
Yeah, that's not bad. All right, last thing, I'll let you kind of brag on yourself as we finish here. You've been doing this. How long have you been the recruiting coordinator now?
Oh, God. I don't even know. 2010? Something like
It's been a decade?
Yeah. Oh, no, not a decade. It can't be a decade. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I was sitting here thinking, I'm looking at this Zoom and I'm going, my bald head is shining right now.
When did you shave the head for the first time?
2014, 15.
Okay.
When I punted.
Was it your decision? Lauren tell you to? What happened?
It was my decision. Like
okay.
I just couldn't live the lie. I had like two little alleys right here in the middle.
Like
and
Bozo the Clown, kind of like almost.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna be the guy to come over. Like I'm good with who I am. Like I am. Spend a lot less money on shampoo.
What's Cliff doing with his these days?
Oh, he's I call it Lieutenant Dan, the high and tight like me. I mean, it's
as low as he can go. Just get it.
Yeah. Hey man, we'll go in and we'll get like a half guard and call it a day.
I guess my point is SEC Network, you got the new facilities with the weight room and stuff and whatever. And it was, I mean, when you got the job, Ole Miss had already been to a lot of super regionals and whatever. But just from a national standpoint, how is this thing perceived in living rooms and whatever differently than, you know, when you came back, even forget recruiting coordinator, but when you first stepped back on the campus after doing some other stuff?
You know, I think the program's evolved. Obviously, the league has, the exposure has with all the tools and resources that you said. But I think it starts, like if you said, what is one thing that's helped separate our program? I will be honest with you. It's the reputation of the guy in the corner office.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people sit down with him and kids deal with him, they know that and this is really hard in the world of athletics. They know that they're going to be dealt with in a very direct, honest, transparent way. Certainly there's some great things about this program. Like if you said, hey, what do I talk about when I go out on the road? And when I'm talking to kids, when I talk about the experience, when you come play at Swayze Field, and I say this as a player, not experienced it like it is now, but it is so unique what our fan base does for the kids when they get on the field. It's the thing that stands out. You look at the number of people that show up, you look at the size of our town, you compare it to the other teams that we draw against as far as rank, you know, the top 10 schools for attendance. And it's exceptional. You know, we're not drawing from the huge population base. Now you can say, hey, the state of Mississippi doesn't have a pro team. Well, that's right. That's a good thing. Like Ole Miss is the pro team, whether it's the football, baseball, or basketball side of it. And just the atmosphere with the students. I mean, I think that's one of the things that is super unique about Ole Miss is, man, you look out there on a Tuesday night and it's, you know, 48 degrees and you're playing whoever, and those students are rowdy. Now, they are quite warm, but they are having a great time. But that is so cool when you start talking about, you know, the experience, having a college baseball experience and what it's like to go out there and play. And so I think that's the coolest thing for me. I'm just a guy that, you know, tries to be the mouthpiece that, hey, this is what Ole Miss is. You know, this is what, you know, Coach Bianco under his direction has helped turn it into. This is what our fans and our students create here. This is the beautiful facility that our administration has backed and given us to continue to support baseball, because baseball is important here. So it's cool, man. Like I mean it, and this is no bullshit. Ooh, I don't know if I can say that online.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. But I feel lucky, you know. I mean, I'm in a place that I care about, that matters to me, that baseball matters, and so yeah, man, it's cool. That's the easiest way I could say it.
What's the most creative thing somebody's yelled at you all pissed off when you're going down the line to the bullpen? What do you got? What do you remember?
You know what? I get crushed at Southern Miss. Southern
Really?
Miss. Oh, they crush me. They will crush. They will pull out Lauren. Talking about my wife, they will absolutely crush me on her. Like, anything and everything you could think of that would clearly communicate there's no reason for her to be with me.
And you're agreeing. You're like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, man, I got nothing for you. But they get real creative with why they think that's happened.
Sure.
And I don't know that I can really say it here in a where it's going to be repeated to the public. But that's the fun part of it, man. Like I laugh. I've had a 12-year-old kid take a stick and stab me in the back in the bullpen at Duty Noble. Like, and like his dad's there, like applauding. I'm going like, hey man, that's your kid. Like he is assaulting me. Like, what is going on?
He literally stabbed you with a stick?
Yes, like taking a stick. It was the old Duty Noble, and there was a chain link fence, and he was running it through there and like jabbing me with it. And I'm like, oh hey, like, and I was expecting like the dad to get on him. And the dad's like, no, that's great, that's awesome. I'm like, what world are we in, man? What is going on? But yeah, Southern Miss though, woo, they know how to give it to you.
What's the worst one out of state?
South Carolina.
Really?
South Carolina. No,
I would have pictured them as a little more low key. Okay.
No, Matt Smith. I thought Matt Smith was going to go in the stands and fight somebody at one point in time there.
Well, Matt did that a lot. That was not overly uncommon for Matt. I still remember him tipping his cap at Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament that year. And we get him after the game. We're like, hey, what happened? He's like, their coach said some things. I said some things. Stuff happened.
Par for the course. South Carolina, though, they really get on you. Outside of that, going through the league, LSU, they'll rag you, but they have some feel, and it's more of a baseball related. I think they're fans. Texas A&M, not as much. They have a good atmosphere, but it's not.
They blow bubbles at you.
Yeah, blow bubbles at you. You're kind of away from them. The way the field's set up, they're kind of, they're there and on you from behind, but not so much in the bullpen or things like that.
Perfect. Appreciate it, bud. Let's do it again soon.
Happy to do it, man.